Hello Internet. So about a year ago I put out a video that was something along the lines of let's chat about flow. It was essentially me rambling on talking about my theory behind how to get better flow in your flying. And the general idea behind it was basically that you need to forget about trying to flow properly and just focus on practicing and getting your flying skills to a point where all of your controls and that sort of thing become completely subconscious. About 6 months later, so towards the end of last year, I think I did a video that was essentially a trick tutorial, but it was more about a method behind breaking down whatever trick it is that you want to learn, looking at ways of applying that to any trick. So you can sort of, if you see somebody doing something really cool, you can basically take that footage, slow it down if you need to figure out what the different elements are of the control inputs, go out, practice it with a stick cam, and then you can even bring that back into your own editing software and play it frame by frame and use that to figure out the exact method behind doing something. And once you've figured that out, then you can basically take the original video's idea, which is to just go out and fly as much as possible. So today's video is basically taking the principles from those videos and then looking at, I would say, the next step or the third step in getting to a point where you can flow all of your flying together in like a really seamless way. And that is your spatial awareness. So in some of my more recent flying specific videos, I have a few people comment on my spatial awareness in the spots that I was flying. So that's sort of what prompted this video. And I think that a lot of it is, I think it's like a 50-50 mix between me being super confident and comfortable with the drone that I'm flying because the whole setup has been so similar for so long. But then it's also about knowing the environment that you're in and sort of, I guess, when you're in a space that you know really well and you're flying something that you know really well and you know you've got a degree of confidence in your skills and all that kind of thing, you're actually kind of flying a couple of steps ahead of where the drone actually is at any one point in time. So if we look at some example footage, this is a flight that I did the other day, and this was in completely new locations. This is the very first pack that I flew, and you can see that I'm sort of messing around and doing a whole bunch of tricks and stuff, but there is a degree of hesitation, I suppose, between one trick and the next, and I'm kind of looking around to see what I can do. When I do a trick over a tree or something, particularly if I'm close to it, I have to be aware of what's around me. So if I'm doing something inverted or looking backwards or whatever, I have to try and, it takes a little bit more conscious thought to figure out what's behind me or what I'm heading towards, especially if I can't see it. And then if we look at another clip, this is also fairly recent, but this is in an environment that I know really well. And here I'm literally just sort of like, I would say that my mind is probably 5 to 10 seconds ahead of what's actually you're seeing in the video. And what I mean by that is I might do a trick like a power loop over a tree, an inverted power loop over a tree. And while this trick is happening, I'm actually not really thinking about the trick itself. I've already thought that through and I'm already thinking about where is the drone going to end up and sort of how I can go towards that next obstacle, that next position, and make it look like one sort of seamless thing. And even that, like I'm not actually consciously thinking that, but that's sort of subconsciously what's going on inside my brain. And this is another thing where I think that music really helps, at least for me, to fly, because basically calms your mind down a little bit and puts you into a state where you're kind of thinking more about coordinating the movements of your drone with the music that you're listening to, and you're not actually caught up in the mechanics of what you're doing. You're just sort of doing it instinctively. So I guess if you're looking for like a quick tip on how you can get better, this is this is not the video that's going to explain anything like that, because I think that this is really just about doing as much practice as you possibly can and getting to a point where, even though the practice might not be that much fun sometimes, if you're doing, especially if you take it really seriously and you're doing drills about specific tricks, or you spend even a couple of packs in a new location if you feel like it takes you a while to learn a new spot. Sometimes, like, I feel like I can learn a new spot fairly quickly, but if that's not the case for you, then just take your time when you get to a new spot. Fly around and like actually deliberately don't do tricks, because what that'll do is you'll find that you'll end up flying smoother, probably carrying more speed and looking for lines through the location to make your flying interesting, rather than just relying on like flip-flops to make it interesting. So if you can get to a point where you can make your flying sort of visually appealing without doing like really technical things, then you can start adding the technical things in later. And the way that you can apply those technical tricks without them detracting from your proximity to locations and your ability to sort of stick to lines and stuff like that is going back to the first video, which is to just make sure that you do enough practice where if you've practiced those tricks enough, you're not having to consciously think about it. Your brain just sort of like inserts tricks along the way as you're flying around and sort of looking for lines and stuff like that. So all these things are essentially how I put my flying together. Again, like I said, I don't really consciously think about this sort of stuff, but I've tried to sort of break down, I guess, what's sort of going on in the back of my head to try and get my flying to where it is. And I feel like the more on top of all of this stuff you are, the more you actually just enjoy your flying because you're not having to think about doing the coolest tricks or finding the best lines. It kind of just comes a little bit more naturally. So I guess this is like the third installment in my How to Flow video series. I hope it was interesting. If you've got any questions about any of this sort of stuff and ways that I might actually apply it in the real world, then drop it in the comments below and maybe I can do another video soon. Anyway, that's it for today. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.